Welcome to Cody and the Cinema. Today I'm discussing one of the most thoroughly uncomfortable and miserable experiences in the Criterion Collection that I believe every film fan should have at least once. An important film that, like I said, is not particularly pleasant to watch. This is called Fires on the Plain. It's a Connie Chikawa film that's often seen as sort of a companion piece to the Burmese Harp and was made after it, although this film is nowhere near as optimistic as that one is. This is a truly terrifying, bleak, dragged in the mud kind of experience, and I don't think I'll watch the film again. I did watch it once, and I had a variety of conflicting thoughts about it, but ultimately I do think everyone should see it. And if you're a fan of some of the war films like Python and those realism, those neorealism kind of films, I think you're going to want to see it if nothing else. But it is a real tough experience. So the story centers around a group of Japanese soldiers, and one of them has TB, and he's basically spends a lot of time with no real identity in terms of the particular platoon or troop he's with, and he just wanders around aimlessly, as does the plot. This is not a tightly woven narrative. It's more of a series of depressing images that are important to see, though, and are really well done. Soldiers fall in the mud, sometimes like rag dolls. There's a sequence where they're crawling to try to avoid a conflict, and they look like sea turtles, trying to survive, crawling across a beach when they're in their infancy kind of stages. To contrast this with the Burmese Harp, which I did cover in another review, and I'll link here in the description with our little essay here. It says, lyrical, sentimental, and melodramatically unrestrained, the Burmese Harp might seem in many ways aesthetically antithetical to the expressionist excesses of Fires on the Plain. See, the former utilizes its comparatively discrete heaps of human remains as the fleeting, shot-cut glimpses of mortal impermanence that leads to its main character's reaffirmations of the beauty of faith. The latter imbues its cascades of carnage with no such reverence or transformative value. In other words, this is not a poetic, beautiful film. One of the really, really depressing parts of this film is watching a scene that is masterfully done, but goodness, it's depressing, where our main character finds some salt when he's interacting with some villagers. And he has to decide whether or not he's going to trade the salt, give it to people out of kindness, if he's going to hoard it all. And this is very much an exchange of resources throughout the film. Food is everything. There is cannibalism in this film. It's truly... I was thinking about other films in the collection that disturbed me. I wanted to bring up Sallow, or The 120 Days of Sodom. This is the back of that film. Sallow, I think I could watch again, because as shocking and disturbing as the imagery is, I felt like I was seeing something more purely artistic, and it felt too much. This particular film felt too much like something that could happen to anybody. And what I mean is, it didn't feel far away the way the Burmese Harp did, or the way Sallow did. The true, dehydration, hunger, things like this, by wisely, in my opinion, the director bringing us with the kinds of conflicts that any of us could face. I've had a number of physical sicknesses where I've been severely, severely dehydrated and hungry and so forth, but I feel like there's more of a relationship to me personally with the material. Maybe that's why I was so cold to it. It's so tough to watch. Like, Come and See, I've talked about that on the channel before. I do not want to see Come and See again, but it was a 5-star film for me. I don't want to own Come and See, and like I do. I own a DVD copy of it, but I don't need to see it again. And so in that way, the film is really conflicting, because it's so important to see. And as a little side note here, a little tangent, I really wish that we had better media literacy worldwide so that people could engage with films like this instead of having that language barrier and that pacing barrier kind of hold them back. Because I do think it's a film that all film fans should see. It's just really tough to watch. It's so matter of fact. In fact, the actual criticism I have of the film is that I don't really like the main actor's performance. He's almost like too jaded and too separated from the awfulness around him, and maybe that's a big part of the point, and maybe I'm missing something there. It can just make you want to crawl in a hole and cry. And some of the scenes where folks are shot down, and then some stand back up. And someone mentioned on Letterboxd how it had a Walking Dead kind of feeling, like the literal Walking Dead all around it. It is awful, like in that way. I think that of all the kinds of films that the Criterion Collection preserves, this is the one that's the most important. And I hope that there is a great deal of participation in people who choose to buy the film and interact with it, because it is wonderful at what it does in its own way. I just, like, again, if you're going to buy this with the idea that you're going to watch it multiple times, I think you're really going to struggle. I think you're going to struggle with watching that super realistic hunger that the characters, face, and how that's everything. Food is everything. I mean, there's really nothing left. No ideals, no hope. It's bleak, and I'm a pretty cynical person, and I struggle with it. So, does that mean it's a great film? Or does that mean it's too much? I think it's probably a pretty great film. I don't think it's as good as The Burmese Harp. I think The Burmese Harp gives you a little bit more, but it's one of the really important films in the collection, and it's tough to know how to recommend this film, because for someone already into some of those anti-war films, you're going to like it, I think. Passive Glory, Come and See, these films I talk about. For people who aren't interested in that, this is going to be too much for you. It's too much for me, probably. But I'm glad it is. I'm glad it challenges. I enjoy that I'm having trouble, dealing with all the emotions that this brings. And what I really appreciate about the film most of all is that it's so universal. War's bad. It doesn't matter what side of this you're on. There are characters constantly considering surrendering to the Americans, because at that point, at least, they'll have something, that they might be able to find some shelter, some food, whatever they need, medicine. I mean, there's a character, there's a character that just literally just is lying down waiting just to die. And everyone just totally has just accepted that in a way I've never seen quite, committed to screen. I think about both of these films, The Burmese Harp and Fires on the Plains, and how kind of different they are, and I really expected them to be very similar. But I hope Criterion does more of this kind of thing. I hope that they are able to bring more and more cinematic experiences to the forefront that have this much weight and power. And if nothing else, there are individual images in here that I absolutely promise you will stay with you as a film viewer. So, thinking more about it, talking it out here, pouring my heart out on this thing, I guess these two are essential buys in the collection for people that, want the heavier stuff. For one, I think it's just important to support Criterion's current mission here to really amplify these kind of voices in cinema. This stuff is probably going to increase in, I think about sight and sound polls like that. I'd say these kind of films will show up more and more as these things get released. I know certainly both films will be on my mind, and although I did like The Burmese Harp a little better, I did think it was a little bit better made of a film in some ways, I think they're both very important to have and to own and to appreciate. A real difficult film to wrap my mind around. So those are my thoughts. I don't know of a better way to articulate it than to just be as candid and honest as I know how in this review. Now, for those of you that have seen either film and you want to leave comments, let me know. And if you found this to be useful in some way, you can click the thumbs up button and subscribe. But I do hope you'll at least read about the films and decide if they're for you or not. It's going to be tough. Even like Sallow that I mentioned here, it's kind of going to depend on the particular viewer. With that having been said, we'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.